I wanted to be a part of Roadies because that time I was a huge fan of Raghuram. And Roadies 6 is the only season where Raghuram was not a part of it.
So tell us about what all did you do when you were when you came to Bombay? What so you actually partially touched about you were in MTV and stuff, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what all shows you were part of and and how that journey has transpired to you becoming a filmmaker? How does that help and not?
My time in MTV, the only thing that I regret about my time in MTV is when I got the actually the day when I gave interview in MTV, the same day in the morning I gave interview in BBC also, and I was very hopeful that I'll get the job in BBC because my BBC interview was much better than MTV. But eventually, as luck would have it, my BBC interview did not crack, but my MTV interview cracked, and I went there. And of course, again, I'm talking about a time when the hype for Roadies was too much. That time, Roadies was a very, very happening show for the youth. So when I got on board in MTV and when they told me that I will be a part of the creative team for Roadies and Roadies 6 and Splitsvilla 4, I was initially very excited. But then all my excitement went down because Roadies 6, I mean, I wanted to be a part of Roadies because that time I was a huge fan of Raghuram. And Roadies 6 is the only season where Raghuram was not a part of it. You're
Okay.
getting my point? Yeah, but I mean, as co-employees, as my senior, I definitely got too much scope to interact with Raghu. And I'm telling you, off camera, off Roadies, Raghu is a very different person. He's a very sweet and very my dear person. At the same time, he's very sharp. He can easily mindfuck you any moment. So the best thing is you don't screw with that person. If you don't screw with that person, he's very sweet.
Trust
But
us,
this is
the whole country doesn't want to screw with that guy. At least whatever we have seen him on camera, right? We don't
yeah.
want to go there. Roadies banega tu roadies banega. There is an existential
Exactly.
crisis right there with you, you know.
Exactly. So I literally wanted to work with him on that show, which I could not do. Eventually, as I mean, since Raghu is the senior supervising producer for MTV, that time now so they all have left. So that time when he was, so eventually I was under him. I got to learn from him. I got to everything that was there. But working hand in hand with him in Roadies, that is what I could not do. Yeah, but what happened is Roadies, Spitzvilla, then VJ Hunt in all this what to say in all these shows, what I actually got to learn is how with a very unconventional set of team you can still come up with a good output if you have your vision clear about what you want to see on the screen, because this is a kind of learning which you don't get to adapt in the film school. In the film school, what we learned was almost in a very set atmosphere. Everything was given to you so that it can facilitate your craftsmanship. But when I was in MTV, resources was limited, and we had to. I mean, I'm telling you just as an example. I'm telling you of all the auditions, I mean, the auditions that you see, like you see 100 of candidates of auditions, but actual auditions are like thousands. Okay. So out of those thousands, sorting out 100 candidates who are interesting, who can get you the right amount of curiosity of the audience and grab the proper TRP was an itself a task which we could never have learned in the film school. But how we learned it, because that time Rodi 6 happened in 2010. That time the digital revolution was not there so much. So we were shooting in DV tapes. And we could not, I mean, there were thousands of DV tapes for, I mean, there are like 2 or 3 DV tapes per day of audition. So like if there are like 2 months of audition, you calculate 60 days into 3 DV tapes per day. So it's like 150, 180 DV tapes overall. So we could not have the capacity, or we do not have the luxury to digitize all the DV tapes and then convert them and then see in the edit room which ones to keep. So what we had to do is we had to plug in the digitapes in the camcorders, and we need to see in the camcorders and then write down the time codes. Okay, this time code to this time code, this candidate is interesting, we can keep him. And that timeline used to go to the editor, and the editor used to give that timeline to the lineup guy who used to convert only that much portion of the time code from the DV tapes, and those ones are then edited and made into the audition chunk. So this is something that I did not learn in film school. This is something that I learned in MTV. Simple as
like
that.
real versus book knowledge.
Absolutely,
Real
absolutely.
life versus book knowledge.
I can vouch whatever I learned in film school. 10% of that has actually been of actual application to me, real time application. The rest 90% is all that I have learned from my seniors. Like Gajrraj Rao. I mean, my first director whom I assisted is Gajrraj Rao. I think I have told you about him. So learning from him in the initial stage was a very painful experience. But eventually, after a few months, I realized that no, the kind of scolding that I got from him because of the mistakes that I made, it was actually due for me. But because of those scoldings, because of the way he treated me in the initial stages, I actually started giving attention to what is happening on the sets. I mean, he actually dragged my observation skills onto the shoot floor. What happened is the first day I was on the shoot floor, we were shooting in Film City, Goregaon Film City. That was my first day of shoot in Mumbai. I was in awe of the shooting because that is the first time I am actually, apart from film school, for the first time I'm actually seeing an ARRI camera where an actual DOP, not a DOP who is our trainer, an actual DOP who is using, that time we used to have negative roles, who is actually putting in the negative roles and shooting, and he is telling one of the other assistant directors, this is something that I didn't learn in film school, that most assistant directors, how they learn about lenses is they ask which lens the DOP is using, and according to the magnification of the lens, they somehow know that where exactly they have to stand with the clapboard so that the camera can get the focus of the clapboard. So if it's a 50 millimeter, this is the distance you should be. If it's a 70 millimeter, this is where you should be. If it's a 200 millimeter, this is how far you should be. Okay, if it's a 16 millimeter, you should be very close. Something like this. These are the things that I learned there. So when the first day I was seeing all this, I was in awe of the entire shooting process. But I did not realize that in the process, I stood in front of the path of the camera and the monitor got blocked, which my director Gajrraj Rao was sitting, and he just couldn't see anything. He just could see my dad. And he just shouted at the top of his voice, abusing my mom and my dad and everyone of my younger generations. And suddenly, and I just didn't realize. In a few seconds, I just realized someone came from behind me and slapped me hard. And the next thing is get out of the floor. And the rest of the day of the shoot, I was out of the floor, like a punishment that we used to get in school. But that made me realize that on the floor, my awe has got nothing to do with the shooting set. I need to be observant about what is happening, where it's happening, where the camera is taking the taking the angle, which portion he is covering. That should be my focus instead of being in awe. So this is again a learning.
First of all, I'm shocked to know that Gajrraj Rao can get angry. I can't picture that.
He again I must say, Gajrraj Rao, when he is in his right comical mood, he is a very sweet person. But when he is on the shoot as a director, as a filmmaker, when he's on the shoot, actually there's a reason, because when it comes to ad filmmaking, ad film shooting, there are always the agency and client people standing on the top of your head, and they literally control your creative actions. So this is what actually makes a filmmaker very furious, and that furiosity, they cannot just vent out on them, they went out on their assistants. So this is what happened.
Man, every time I listen to a podcast, right, I'm a little more knowledgeable. Let us know what you feel about it in the comment section below. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.